The Miami Dolphins and the Atlanta Falcons get their man. Oh, and so did the Tennessee Titans. We'll talk about all of these new coaches and new destinations here on Locked On NFL.
The barbershop is open and Tony Wiggins has a chair for you. He's ready with some real NFL talk. The local experts of Locked On bring their expertise, and Wiggy is ready with his clippers and shears. Sit down and enjoy. The new Locked On NFL starts now. Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
That's a fact. It's your team every day here on Locked On NFL. We thank you for making us your first listen. I am Tony Wiggins, the host of The Barbershop, where we use the local clips from local experts here on the Locked On Podcast Network to keep you up to date on all of the breaking news. The Locked On Podcast Network is a part of the #1 sports podcast network in the world. My man Kevin Oestreicher joins me again, just like he does every single Tuesday here on Locked On NFL. Here's what we're going to talk about: a dawn of a new day. We're going to hit that in the third segment, and what that means is I think we've seen the turning over of the old names, and now we got the new names coming in as far as teams are concerned. Saleh is solid to the Tennessee Titans. Last time we saw Robert Saleh, he was being escorted by his shirt outside of the Jets facility, and now he's the coach. We're going to start at the very top. They'll talk about Miami Dolphins. The Miami Dolphins get their man, and Jeff Hafley, defensive coordinator from the Green Bay Packers. This is all about familiarity, but this is the theme now, Kevin. Teams are going to start lining up the front office with the coaches so that they can have a better chance of success.
And that's how it should be. It's exactly how it should be. I mean, you have to have that organizational alignment. And I think that, obviously with the Dolphins firing Chris Greer, firing Mike McDaniel, they get the GM in place, obviously coming from Green Bay. And what do you know? The coach comes from Green Bay too. So I think that you're able to and that's what, a lot of these teams are looking for in general when it comes to these openings. It's like, what are some of the franchises that have had success or, have a good staff or a good front office, and they want to get those guys in the building so they can bring the culture from there to their franchise. And so I think that once the Dolphins got their GM in place, everything kind of took shape from there. There are rumblings about certain other candidates, but, Hafley was a popular name this coaching cycle for multiple different teams. And, feels like we're getting you can't let this guy leave the building type of coaching cycle. And it's that way every year. But, there are a lot of openings this time around. And, if you don't hire him, someone else is going to hire him. If you're kind of on the fence, no, you got to be 100% sure about this guy. And I like this hire for Miami. I think it's a solid one, and I think that it can help turn the franchise around.
Sometimes you overthink it. There were people that said that Liam Cohen wasn't ready. There was folks that said that Ben Johnson would learn his lessons the second he got away from the Detroit Lions, and it turns out the Detroit Lions learned a lesson from Ben Johnson not being there. So the thing is this is a copycat league, and once teams get bold enough to give guys a try, other teams are going to follow suit and do the same thing, and then they're going to try to mimic the success that those teams have had, like in Seattle, like in Chicago, and in Jacksonville, and with other examples like the Rams and the 49ers. Here's my man Kyle Krabs, though. He's going to talk to you about why it was so important to start completely over, and something I fully support, being a Jacksonville Jaguars reporter.
They have not organizationally reset from people outside the organization in the entire football operation in the entire time that Stephen Ross has bought the team. That's a fact. It's not an opinion of, they're saying the same things we've heard other people that got hired in Miami, and they tried to hire somebody from Green Bay before, and it's the same old hat. No, it's not. It's not. And the fan base is all over the board with this. It is an undeniable presentation of fact. They have never fired the GM, fired the coach, hired people from outside the Dolphins' walls in the 20 years that Stephen Ross, going on 20 years that Stephen Ross has owned the team.
Sometimes when you cut bait, you got to cut bait all the way. Here's what the problem is in Miami. I think there's a whole bunch of people that wanted the Rams defensive coordinator because his last name is Shula. And now Kyle Krabs going to sit here and have to do these shows and do it in a certain way where he tries to have to explain every single thing and every reason why they did it the way that they did it. But I'm all for realignment, restructuring. But if you do it, you got to clean the entire slate and start over again.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't work. When it doesn't work, it doesn't work. And you need to be able to reset. And I think it's okay to go through a process and just like a guy better than, what other people would like. And, like it doesn't always go the way that a fan base or sometimes an organization wants, right? Like it doesn't always go that way, whether it's a storyline or a connection or a relationship. But this pairing was built on a relationship, with the coach and the GM. So I'm excited for Miami personally. I think it is a good hire. I get the whole Shula thing and everything else, but at the same time, I mean, I think that Jeff Hafley can come in there and just some of the stuff that is being said about him, about can he be the next, up and coming guy to turn a franchise around. There's still a lot of work to do in Miami in terms of the roster and what needs to happen, and obviously the staff that Hafley builds. But I think this is a good start.
Yep. Speaking of the staff that Hafley builds, that's a built-in segue. He has to come from somewhere, and he's going to bring a bunch of people with him. He's coming from Green Bay. So that means Green Bay is losing a bunch of people. And my man Peter Bukowski is going to sit here and tell you right now that we're going to lose this guy, probably lose this guy and this guy. But now they are in the market for a new defensive coordinator. And I think they'll have a robust market for it. Here's Peter from Locked On Packers.
The Green Bay Packers are, as we thought, losing Jeff Hafley to the Miami Dolphins. But this coaching cycle has given the Packers plenty of great options to replace him. But let's start with Jeff Hafley, because he's going to be a Miami Dolphin. He's going to be the Miami Dolphins' next head coach. And there may be players that he takes with him. I'm looking at you, Malik Willis. There may be coaches that he takes with him. Derek Ainsley, DeMarcus Covington. I would say Vince Ogabasi, who is someone he brought with him from Boston College, is probably the favorite to be the defensive line coach in Miami. And the Packers are going to have, if Ainsley and or Covington don't go to Miami, they are the ready-made in-house candidates for the Packers if they want to go that route. I do just want to add here briefly, Christian Parker, former Packers quality control coach and current DB's coach in Philadelphia, is going to interview for the Green Bay Packers DC job, according to reports. So the first guy that we hear about, at least, that's going to come in and interview for the job has been someone who I have had absolutely circled in all of this. Don't think he'd be wildly expensive, but do think he could be an awesome coach.
Listen, man, there it is. For the people that are always shopping for coaches, there's a whole other side of this thing. It's the people who cover teams that are always losing coaches. And now Kevin Oestreicher is here, and I know the Ravens are in a market for a coach, but this is something what Peter just described that has happened to Baltimore so many times over the last 2 decades, where they have success and their coach gets poached, i.e. Mike McDaniel.
Yeah. It's like clockwork. And yes, the Ravens are one of those teams where it happens, and it's gonna, the Ravens, they technically are losing a coach. Now they fired that coach, obviously, and John Harbaugh, but man, there are about to be a lot of Ravens that go and follow John Harbaugh to New York, both coaches and players. So, I mean, look, it's the mark of a good organization, in my opinion. Like, yep. That you're doing things right. And it's almost like an honor, kind of weirdly. Now, it's not fun to lose those guys, but like, you're like, hey, these guys want to do what we're doing. And like, we're like a blueprint for some of these teams, which I think is cool in its own right. So, it's always tough to lose guys. You got to kind of rebuild, but you also have to trust your staff building process, your roster building process. And that's what, just from a Baltimore perspective, that's what they did whenever they lost a coach or, players to certain teams and they followed those coaches. Baltimore just build it right back on up again. And then the next year we'd have the same conversations. Now they're losing those guys because they did well. And so it's always difficult, but at the same time, it tells you a lot about your organization when it does happen.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Sometimes you got to be careful for what you wish for. We're going to cover a whole lot of different perspectives as we talk about these jobs that are open. But the Tennessee Titans got rid of a leader of men with a defensive background and didn't go so well for a few years. Now they're going to hiring a leader of men with a defensive background. We'll talk about Robert Saleh in just a second here on Locked On NFL. All right, today's show is sponsored and brought to you by Indeed. If you've ever hired someone who looked good on paper but wasn't the right fit, you know how important that is. When you want candidates who truly match what you're looking for, trust Indeed. Sponsored jobs. Hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other sites. Indeed sponsored jobs puts your post at the top of the page and helps you reach the right candidates later. If I needed someone for this show, I go straight to Indeed and be very specific about what I need. Real experience, not just a resume buzzword. Spend more time interviewing candidates who check all your boxes with less stress, less time, and more results. Using Indeed sponsored jobs. Listeners to this show get a $75 sponsored job credit to help your job the premium placement, give your job the premium placement it deserves at Indeed.com/LockedOnNFL. Just go to Indeed.com/LockedOnNFL right now and support the show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Today's show is also sponsored and brought to you by Robin Hood. What if sports were traded like markets, man? Now you can put your sports IQ to work in real time with Robin Hood prediction markets. It's not just you against the house. It's you participating in a live market. You can buy or sell positions live all game long. Use your sports knowledge in the moments that matter. Robin Hood prediction markets changed the game. It's people moving the action. So when the momentum shifts, you can move with it. I always know the game, but I didn't have a dynamic way to apply that knowledge. Now I can actually take part live in a market powered by people. You're no longer just a spectator. Play by play, you decide. Every trade, every play with Robin Hood. Now available across the U.S. Download the Robin Hood app now to begin. Futures and cleared swaps trading involves significant risk and not appropriate for everyone. Event contracts are offered by Robin Hood Derivatives, LLC, a registered futures commission merchant and swap firm. All right, moving and grooving with my man, Kevin Oestreicher here on Locked On NFL. So we continue to talk about coaching changes. Some places are happy, some places are sad. A lot of people in Miami may be tripping a little bit on the fact that they hired a coach that they didn't necessarily want. Other jobs are still open. We're going to talk about some that have filled and some that are still open. Right now, the Tennessee Titans. My main man, Tyler Rowland, was all over it. He thought the Titans were going to hire Matt Nagy and he was going to go crazy. If you heard him, you can always hear him on Locked On NFL early in the morning because he wakes you up like a double shot of espresso. In fact, if you sleep, he's about to wake you up right now as we sit here and listen to his reaction to the Tennessee Titans agreeing to terms with 49ers defensive coordinator Robert Saleh.
Boom, baby, stone cold Robert Saleh is the Tennessee Titans' next head coach. Robert Saleh was one of my top 5 candidates going into the hiring cycle, one of my hype candidates, and I could not think of a better option for the Tennessee Titans based on how everything has unfolded. They missed out on a couple of their top candidates, but Saleh is a perfect fit for multiple reasons. Number one, the Tennessee Titans desperately needed leadership. And whether you talk to players in San Francisco, players from his time with the New York Jets, talking to the media in the New York Jets, I got a few people in New York who I've spoke with, all say that Robert Saleh got the absolute best out of all of his players. His players absolutely love him. He's a positive guy who builds his team up, and that's exactly what the Titans need right now. Now, I know that Robert Saleh is not an offensive guy, which would have been my preference, but he is a defensive mastermind. This is a guy at the cutting edge of scheme in the NFL. And more than anything else, I wanted the Titans to find a leader, and I wanted the Titans to find somebody who is the top schematic mind in their organization. And they get both of that with Robert Saleh. Yes, his time.
Woo! That boy's fired up. He happy that they hired Robert Saleh down there with the Tennessee Titans. Had the Jets played better this year and not looked like a total dumpster fire, I don't know if Saleh would have gotten his job, but Robert Saleh is a good coach, and I think he did a good job going back to San Francisco, considering they were all banged up. For him to make that run to the divisional round, man, I thought it was a great job by himself.
Yeah, I mean, they had you and I out there on defense, and they were winning games. Like that's how impressive they were. And again, like the leadership aspect is huge for me with Robert Saleh. Someone who is going to get the guys fired up. He's going to have that passion, and guys are going to want to go to battle for him every single Sunday. And I think that's what this Tennessee team needed. I like him and Cam Ward, but I think again, the next step for me is building out that staff. A lot of people have connected Saleh and Mike McDaniel together based off of their San Francisco's connection. And I think that'd be perfect for Cam Ward, even if it's just for a year. And then McDaniel parlays that into a head coach job because it goes so well. I think that's best case scenario for the Titans is it goes so well where McDaniel, obviously you want to keep him around, but again, like that shows how well it would have gone. Now there are other options in the offensive coordinator category for Tennessee that you can pair with Saleh. But to me, it's just kind of felt like with, once they lost Vrabel and that, Callahan came in and that it wasn't the same, with Vrabel being a guy that can fire you up and have that leadership quality and whatnot. It just didn't feel right with Callahan. I think they got back to that with Robert Saleh. I like it a lot for him.
Yeah, I like it a lot for him too. I'm interested to see what Pittsburgh does because Pittsburgh is a team that is actually, while they're replacing a coach, they're also maintaining a brand. They've had 3 coaches in my whole 56 years of living, and now they're interviewing people. Here's my man Chris Carter talking about their options up in the Steel City.
All right, Steelers fans, it was an exciting weekend in the playoff. But we got to talk about the Steelers because the coaching search is still on. They're making moves, and we did get from my colleague Jerry Dulac at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. He initially reported that the Steelers are planning to talk to former Packers and Cowboys coach Mike McCarthy. Of course, he has personal ties to the area, and they have scheduled an in-person video also with Brian Flores. Now, there was some clarification here that needed to be put out because initially he said they were having a second in-person interview with Brian Flores, and so a lot of people thought, oh, that means they're zeroing in on Brian Flores. And that kind of changed a little bit because a little bit after that, Jerry clarified they're meeting with Mike McCarthy and Brian Flores in person, partially because they see them not needing virtual interviews because the team already has familiarity with each candidate.
It's going to be very interesting to see which way they go because they have hit a home run on each one of their hires. In my 56 years, they've all won Super Bowls. It's a lot of pressure on the next person that gets that job.
Yeah, and it's interesting because obviously I think that they're one of the top openings available, but they're a little different from Baltimore and Buffalo because they don't have that franchise quarterback in place. So obviously with Baltimore and Buffalo, there are kind of timelines, still long ones. I think Lamar and Josh have great football ahead of them, but it's like, all right, that window is now. Like that's the window. With Pittsburgh, they could go in like a billion different directions. Are they going to tear it down? Are they going to try to trade for a quarterback and go all in with the older roster they have right now? Again, like there's a lot, and I'm sure the coach will have a say in that. And based off what ownership's vision is and what Omar Khan wants to do, that will probably play a big factor and a big role. I mean, there have been rumblings on multiple different candidates. I know Mike McCarthy is the most recent one at the time we're recording this. But so it definitely feels like it's going to be somebody who already has experience for Pittsburgh, someone who has been there. McCarthy would be interesting to me, but there are a couple names that make sense for Pittsburgh that I would like. And I think, Flores was the obvious target for everybody once this interview process started and the connection and him being there and it making sense there. But I'm more curious about what direction Pittsburgh goes in terms of their roster and what they want to do there. Because the head coach, they're going to want to have like, all right, what's the plan here? What are we doing? And what they're coming into. It's going to be big.
It absolutely is going to be big. I think there's a shift with Harbaugh out in Baltimore, with Tomlin out in Pittsburgh, and to a certain degree, even though he didn't win a Super Bowl, with McDermott out in Buffalo, it not only represents a shift of the leadership, but maybe a shift of the teams that we will now see winning, and not only the AFC, but the NFC. It's a lot of new blood in the playoffs, so we'll talk about them and whether or not Buffalo is trying to get on the new train and be one of those new teams with a new leader. We'll get to that in just a second here on Locked On NFL. All right, today's show is sponsored and brought to you Buy Drip Drop. Man, Drip Drop works. It absolutely works because you're kicking off the new year. If it's feeling good, if that's your goal, and honestly, hydration is the easiest win. When I stay on top of it, my energy, focus, and mood all level up. But let's be real. Plain water doesn't always cut it, especially when you're grinding through long days, hitting the gym, or just trying to stay consistent with your health goals. That's where Drip Drop comes in. Doctor developed, proven fast hydration that helps your body and mind work better. Think clearer, focus, better energy, elevated mood, even that fresh little glow that you have on your skin, man. Here's what you got to do right now. Drip Drop is offering podcast listeners 20% off your first order. Go to dripdrop.com and use the promo code LOCKEDONNFL. That's dripdrop.com. Promo code LOCKEDONNFL for 20% off. Stock up now at dripdrop.com and use the promo code LOCKEDONNFL. And today's show is sponsored and brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. FanDuel is officially in playoff mode. Every game during the NFL playoffs, FanDuel is giving customers even more ways to get in on the action. Because right now, every NFL playoff game day, FanDuel users get a profit boost pack waiting for them inside the app. Each game day, you'll see a pack loaded with multiple profit boosts. You can apply to the bets you like most. Open your profit boost pack first thing on game day and see what boost you want to apply. The boost gives you more juice on the bet you already like instead of forcing you to bet something new. You make your picks, then apply your profit boost to go after even bigger payouts while the playoffs get rolling. So visit FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL, and grab your profit boost pack every NFL game day and every NFL playoff game day. All right, we're moving and grooving here with my man Kevin Oestreicher. And we've been looking at a lot of these job openings here in the National Football League, but not necessarily talking about them from the prospect of these new jobs mean new people involved. And one of those jobs is Buffalo. Sean McDermott got let go, and he's one of the winningest coaches, even though he has not won a Super Bowl. Buffalo's always at the tip top. I'm thinking that Buffalo's trying to get ahead of the curve a little bit, maybe hire Joe Brady from within, but you got to be careful what you ask for. Here's my man Joe Marino with Locked On Bills.
The Bills became just the fourth team in the history of the NFL to win a playoff game in at least 6 consecutive years. The other 3 teams had 3 Super Bowl wins to show for it, and the Bills haven't even gotten there. I certainly understand that you can't just pick up the pieces and try again next year. Something needed to change. There needed to be a shakeup. But consider me very surprised that shakeup is Sean McDermott, especially because Brandon Beane stays.
Yeah, they totally picked who they thought was the problem, and they picked who they thought was the solution. And I disagree with it. I think Sean McDermott would be a home run hire in Oakland, but that's a whole nother story for a whole nother day. Do you think Buffalo's better or worse off than they were with him as head coach gone?
I think it could go either way. I mean, you have to be positive for Buffalo. You can get a better guy in there than McDermott, and that's going to be hard. I think it's possible, but it's going to be hard too. And, it seems like a lot of the players love McDermott in Buffalo. I think if it was going to be one, it should have been both with McDermott and Beane. If you're going to do that and go that route, you needed to just kind of do everything and everything gets a reset. But, the rosters haven't been good enough to me to justify Brandon Beane staying on and McDermott being the one that is let go. So I don't really, I don't know. It feels like something didn't need, I understand why they did it. I get it. They want to get over that hump, just like, again, Baltimore, Pittsburgh, etc. But to me, it feels kind of reactionary to do it without doing it the full way. And I think it's going to cause splits within the organization that they might not like, but it comes with the territory of essentially blaming your problems on one guy that the players clearly multiple expressed that they felt like they let guys down. And I'm sure McDermott was on that list. So I'm curious to see how that all unfolds.
I'm glad you brought that up because Atlanta made a hire, and immediately guys like Denzel Ward in Cleveland was saying, "Oh, we love Coach Stefanski." Basically, paraphrasing it, the players aren't saying anything bad about him. So it's funny you try to get answers through Atlanta's hire about how that's going to go and how that's going to be, based on you're trying to get answers for Cleveland, like what happened, because we still don't know who was wrong. Was it the owner? Was it the coach? Was it the GM? Was it the QB? You still don't have answers to those questions. But there are a bunch of new teams. Washington thought they was there last year. Carolina, Jacksonville made noise this year, along with the Bears, and the Seahawks are still rolling. You can consider Denver and New England new money as well, because even though those organizations have been there in recent memory, these aren't the same players, and this is a reboot of all of that. So the Rams are like the last of the Mohicans, the team that is one of the teams that's been winning a lot lately. So the door is still open on a lot of teams, and one of those teams is the Atlanta Falcons, and I think they're trying to start over new while absolutely just taking that next step that they need to as an organization. Here's my man Aaron Freeman talking about the impact of hiring Kevin Stefanski and what impact that will have on Michael Penix.
You're going to hear a lot more stuff where I think people are going to try to tell you that, you know, hiring Stefanski benefits Michael Penix. I don't think it really does anything for Michael Penix. I don't think it hurts Michael Penix. I don't think it helps Michael Penix. I think we're just kind of in neutral with Michael Penix. And so what is actually going to help or hurt Michael Penix has less to do with, you know, getting under center. It's going to be, you know, what this bridge quarterback, you know, whether that's Kirk Cousins or somebody else, you know, does in the games, right? That guy winning or losing games, right? If that guy wins games to start the season, that's going to hurt Michael Penix. If that guy loses games to start the season, that's going to help Michael Penix and allow him to get back on the field sooner versus later.
Here's the thing, though. This is going to tell you a lot about, okay, that's what happened in Cleveland. If the same thing happens here with a young quarterback, you're going to go, see, why did they hire him? If he does something different and he's able to extract something out of Michael Penix, people are going to be like, see, you shouldn't have fired him. So, hey, this is going to be a tell-all here, and it's all going down in the ATL.
Is the popular phrase is Kevin Stefanski, his legacy is on the line right here. Like it is. I mean, we saw it happen in Cleveland and the reaction that got. And again, that was just a whole mess in general. But again, Stefanski played a part in that. So, you know, I feel like to me, there is a lot that Stefanski has to prove here, but I'm also excited for that Falcons core group of guys that I think Stefanski has the potential to take them to that next level. We've been hoping to see for years in Atlanta with how much talent they have. So Stefanski was a very popular name in the process for a lot of different teams, and hopefully it can work out in Atlanta.
Yeah, hopefully it can. We're going to keep an eye on all of that stuff. And more importantly, we're going to watch the rest of these games because the conference championships are set. If you're an everydayer, man, you should be. Make sure you look down in the description of the show that you listen to the most and become an everydayer, a member of the Everydayer Club for that show. Get exclusive stuff like ad-free shows and access to our merch store so you can buy your favorite Locked On merchandise. Make sure you tap into the Everydayers. Kevin Oestreicher and I, we're going to get out of here and go tend to our business. That's what good barbers always do. We're going to go tend to somebody else's business. So we'll be back tomorrow with another episode and edition of Locked On NFL. 2 of them tomorrow, starting with Tyler Rowland in the morning and me in the afternoon. We appreciate y'all, man. We don't take you for granted. You spent about 28 minutes here with us today. Thanks a lot.